Hello everyone, today I'm back at Sunderland Cemetery in Grangetown in Sunderland. I've come to do a story about several people from the past. It's a sad story, there is no happy ending, and we're going to visit the grave, but I won't go too close to it at the moment because it'll give away the story and so on. So around 1910, a Sunderland man called James Neilson left Sunderland and headed for South Africa to make his fortune in the gold mining industry. He also did a bit of preaching in the Methodist tradition while he was out there. He was the son of James Neilson, who was a Sunderland diver who lived at Diver's House down by the docks. While James was out in South Africa, he met an English girl by the name of Dinah Owen Nicholson. Her family were from over Cumberland and they had emigrated as well. So the two met and got married in 1915 at a place called Boksburg in the Transvaal. Now, as we know, 1915 was right in the middle of the Great War. James signed up for the South African Heavy Artillery. Now, the one part of the story I've never been 100% sure on is at what point they moved to Sunderland, or whether James signed up for the artillery in South Africa and Ina, because that's what they're called, Dinah, that was a name, it was a nickname that the family used for her, and James did as well. Whether she came back to England separately to Sunderland and James went off to Europe, or if they both came back together at some point in 1915 and set up a home in Sunderland, that's a bit I don't know. But the South African Heavy Artillery went off to the Somme, and James took part in the action at the Somme. But sadly, he lost his life along with thousands of others. And James is remembered on a headstone just around here somewhere, which I will try and find. It's a while since I've been to visit, actually, so it's in this particular area. I think I've seen it. It's a cross, and it was in line with that particular chapel. Just seeing a lovely surname there. Well, oh, there it is. Moonlight. I will do a story. I have done a story, and that will come back to that another time. So here is a headstone in memory of James, just to give you some idea where we are. There's the Southern Chapel at Sunderland Cemetery, so we're only about 20 metres away from it. The main road through is just over there, so it's quite easy to find. So, Bombardier James Neilson, South African Heavy Artillery, killed in France August the 24th, 1916, aged 24 years. He's not buried here, he's buried at one of the war cemeteries out in France. Now, sadly, on the 24th of August, that same year, the same day, Ina gave birth to a child. They called her, well, Ina called that child just simply Babe. And on the headstone underneath the memory of a beloved husband, it also says, also their babe, born dead August the 24th, 1916. So poor Ina, she lost a husband and she had a child born dead on the same day. What a terrible coincidence. Tragedy. Don't even know if James knew Ina was pregnant. Ina wouldn't have known James had died on that day because the father of James only got a letter a few days later notifying the family of his passing. From like I think it was his commanding officer sent a letter over to Sunderland about that. So Ina was now a widow. She'd lost their baby, and at some point after 1915 she was living at 24 Leachmere Road, which is probably half a mile away from here. It's not the 24 that exists today. The street was renumbered. It's one of the older houses on the left hand side up to Asda, and she lived there. And she had a job at the rates office, which was the old town hall on Fawcett Street. In October 1917, she put an advert in the Sunderland Daily Echo saying that she had lost a war widow's brooch somewhere between 24 Leachmere Road and the rates office, and she was asking if anybody found it, if she return it. It meant a lot to her. And this particular brooch was engraved with the South African heavy artillery and details about James. Lots of widows had these. It was just something sentimental, which meant a lot to remember the dead husband. Don't know if hopefully it was found and returned to her. It wouldn't have had much value to anybody. Purely sentimental, but we never know whether that came back. So that was October 1917. Now, Ina was ill. She was suffering from TB consumption. Around this time, it was more commonly known as TB, which was pretty much at that time a death sentence. Her husband James, he died on October. James had been 24 years when he died back in 1916. So a lot of TB patients in the northeast went off to places called sanatoriums. One of the most well-known ones, was up at Woolsingham, Weardale. It was called Lees's. So she went up there, and sadly, on October the 19th, 1919, in her 24th year, she sadly died. Her body was returned to Sunderland, and she was buried in this particular spot. And there's the mention of her, in loving memory of our dear Ina, who died October the 19th, 1919, in her 24th year, beloved wife of Bombardier James Nielsen, South African Heavy Artillery. So a tragic end. So what's that, in the space of just over 3 years, James and Ina were dead. The first child, Babe, had been born dead. And that was it. That small little family, all gone. And the last words on this particular headstone are simply united again. Just shows you what some people had to go through. TB was so common. It was called the robber of youth because lots of people who suffered were just in the teens or the 20s or the 30s. Millions died between like the mid 1800s through to like 1930. So going to dedicate this video to James, Ina and Babe, who were united again. So I'll just leave you with the view of the headstone if you ever want to pay your respects or come and visit it. So firstly, I just say thank you for, if you watch it. It was a sad story, but important story. Just shows what some of these widows and families went through. Not just having to deal with like the Great War and that, obviously dealing with like living in a world where TB was always a risk you could catch. So thank you very much. Hopefully I'll see you next time with something a little bit happier. So thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.